Are you a good EB1 candidate? That's the question we're going to answer today. Give you updates on current events and answer questions. So stay with us and we'll be back in a second. Hello, this is Sam Shihab.
I'm Brian Burke.
And with the law firm of Sam Shihab and Associates, and we're going to talk about employment-based first preference category. Break it down. It's a category that earlier when I started practicing law, I wrote a lot of those, and it has moved on to other people in our organization. But it is a very interesting area, and there's a lot of advantages for being classified in EB1 if you can, and we're going to explain to you how you can be and whether you can be, and go from there. Yeah. So the first thing is, let's go through some numbers.
Yeah. So Sam, I'm gonna let you talk about the numbers, but I also have a visual representation of representation. Let's talk about the numbers first. First. So
like every other category, there's 140,000 employment-based visas available. And the EB1 is 28.6% of it. And that's a pretty decent number, which translates to approximately, let's see here, what's the? I don't have the exact total number.
Sam, I'm an attorney, not an engineer. I'm not good with the mental math and percentages.
But here's the thing they should know. I don't have the unusual fees. Okay, so here's the thing that you should know. Only 11%, or approximately 15,000 cases were approved last year. Of the 15,000 cases that were approved, there were 5,492 cases from India. One-third of the volume of the cases for India. That tells me a couple important pieces of information. What's the first one, Brian?
People from India want to be in the EB1 category. That's what it tells me.
No, that does not.
No, Sam, I'm just going to show you my chart right now. Yeah. There it is. That's what I think is the most important piece of data about the EB1 category. It is current.
Well, what the first thing you should know, and we can keep that slide on, the first thing you should know is that in the EB2 categories last year, there's 58,000 approvals. In the EB3 category, there are 56,000 approvals. In the EB1 is only 15,000. Which explains why it is current and almost always current throughout the year, just about. Yeah. We don't see it backed up a lot.
It's been a while since EB1 hasn't been current, and even for India. I guess you're getting to the point where it's a hard category to get into. It's a exclusive little club, isn't it?
Yes, and it's the first thing. It's really not everybody. Obviously, when you have between EB2 and EB3, 120,000, a little bit less than that, of cases approved, and you have 11,000 in the EB1, it tells you one thing, that it's really not for everybody.
Yeah, well, agreed. But, why are we talking about it then, Sam? And my answer is because I am frequently asked about EB1. Can I do an EB1? Why can't I do an EB1? There's EB3. I know I could qualify for that. EB2, I know I can do that. I want to move one step up the ladder.
Well, I think there's two reasons why we're talking about it. Number one, clearly there are people that qualify. Yeah. And if you don't qualify, it's good to know that you don't qualify. I mean, that's a good piece of information. But if you qualify, it's even better information that you qualify. Sure. So that's the first thing. And then throughout the history, the EB1 goes through a zigzag in terms of the
tightness, perhaps?
The government's attitude towards it. Sure. Because one year's EB1 is another year's not EB1, and vice versa. Of course, these are on maybe the bottom half of the cases. On the top half of the cases, you qualify at any time.
Sure.
But on the bottom half of the cases, let's say the bottom 50% of the
edge cases, yeah.
Yeah, more than that, there is a change in attitude, and we see now a
swing in the right direction.
Yeah,
so let's talk about this. So recently, the Biden administration came down from the mountaintop with some policy. They said, we want to really sort of invite some more STEM people to stay in the United States. And they issued a whole bunch of new and interesting sort of policies. And if you're interested, here's a sort of press release from the White House on the subject. But the bottom line is they are doing things to encourage STEM candidates to come and stay to the United States. A couple of things they've done is for the STEM OPTs after student visas, they've said we're going to expand the categories of people that are eligible for STEM OPTs, the types of degrees. And then they also did some changes to the O1 visa program, which is kind of related to EB1 visas because, Sam, go ahead.
Now, how does that compare to the prior administration?
Well, the prior administration, to put it politely, their opinion was approve as little visas as possible. Anybody who dealt with an H-1B visa during the prior administration's time knew the standards were ridiculously high, and it was very, very hard to get approved, or harder to get approved than normal.
Yeah, obviously we had an administration that did not have a good attitude towards it. Now, this administration is saying we're getting behind.
Yeah.
And obviously that's also, and there's obviously updates on current events and a couple legislation that's passed the House.
Yeah.
Again, in the same attitude. So there is a collective feeling that maybe we've made some steps.
The United States is falling behind other countries in terms of attracting top talent from around the world, which enriches our country.
Which has never been a problem until recently. This has never been an issue until in the last probably 10 years. And they're trying to change that direction. Obviously, we all know why is because the unavailability of visas and the incredible backlog and the incredible delays.
I'm a U.S. immigration attorney, and I have conversations with people about green cards and say, yeah, maybe I'll just go to Canada. Bums me out.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So in any event, the other thing that you should know about looking at the numbers is that from India, there is 64,000 EB2 and EB3 approved last year. 5,492 in EB1. So about less than 10%.
Yeah.
8%.
Yeah.
So 1 in 5, 1 in 6, 1 in 7, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the number is. As a matter of fact, no, less than 1 in 10. Then 1 in 10. 1 in 12, 1 in 13. So it's less people, but there's a lot of people out there that qualify.
Yeah, well, thousands of people a year. And again, I will, before we move on, I'll go back to its main point of attractiveness. It's right here. It's, for EB2 for India, it's the worst. EB3, you're waiting about a decade. And EB2, you're waiting about a decade. 1 year is a drop in the bucket between the EB2 and EB3 categories right now. EB1, if you were to get an I-140 approval today, you could file that adjustment of status today.
Yeah. So 1 in 10, you qualify. If you are one of the 10 out of the 10 people that you will qualify, you do want to be in the EB1, not in the EB2 or 3.
Yeah.
So what are the 3 big bubbles of the EB1 category?
Sure. So there's persons with extraordinary ability. There are outstanding professors and researchers. And then there's multinational executives or managers.
So the way I look at it is that you have the multinational executives and managers, which has to do with the really kind of connected to the L visa somehow, but it is not married to it. It's connected, but you can definitely get to it without being on L visa. Then the other one is basically the researchers and the professors.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of wiggle room on that, but you're right. There's an academic thread throughout those cases. Yeah.
And then there's the catch-all category, the extraordinary ability. The big ones say, hey, if you're not in this group and if you're not in the other group, we have this big bucket of extraordinary ability that we can.
The cream of the crop, the top people in their field, regardless if you don't fit in managers or executives, you don't fit in professors or researchers. Regardless, if you're at the top of your field, come in this category.
Yes, and a lot of people that I have dealt with throughout my career, when I ask them, do you believe, that's the difficult question you usually ask, because people don't want to say good things about themselves. Do you believe that you are an extraordinary ability candidate? Do you believe you are one? And most people who qualify say yes.
Yeah.
Now, most people that don't qualify don't say no, but people that qualify, so I usually ask the people the question, do you believe that you qualify? And then obviously,
honestly, I've never talked with you about that, about consulting with people on this, but that's exactly how I approach it. I say, you know the requirements. I give them a link if they don't. Do you think you can meet those requirements?
Yeah, do you believe that? Yeah. And then throughout the history, I've had people who said, "Oh, absolutely," and I say, "Oh, so you're so cocky." And usually, they are really good. And some people say, "Oh, I think I think I do." Most of the time, they do, and that's a good starting point. Shall we hit the big one first, Brian, or shall we get the small ones first? Which one do you want to hit?
I think they're all really interesting. So let's start with the big one, extraordinary ability. The if you're the superstar in anything, you don't meet one of the other ones. This is the category for you.
Yes.
So basically, to boil it all down, you have to be at the top of your field, sustained at the top of your field, renowned, recognized, and you have to meet certain criteria to show that. And well, actually, if you have there's certain really special criteria you can meet to get to show that you're top of your field. Nobel Prize, something like that. Not really appropriate for the average person. I can't imagine how many of those EB1 approvals, those 5,000 in the last year, are Nobel Prize winners. But for most other people, there's a reasonable list of, you have to meet 3 of the 10 of these 10 requirements. So let's go into them. Receipt of nationally or internationally recognized awards. So that's like, you do something cool in your field and you win a prize for it. Memberships in associations that require outstanding achievements. So that's like, professional societies.
But not any professional society.
Yes, so ones that require achievement of their membership to...
one that requires more than your money.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
But Sam, we're going to come back around to some of these because part of that new policy from the Biden administration is they've sort of expanded and opened up these categories, what might meet these requirements for the purposes of STEM people. They've given some really great insights as to what they think might meet these requirements for people in STEM fields. So what else is on the list? Published in major publications, and those are like academic publications, like scholarly articles where somebody peer reviews your work. Participation as a judge of others' work in your field. So that's if you go to a conference in your field and there's a panel or people are making presentations and you kind of give out awards. That sort of thing is what I usually think of. Mm-hmm. So there is your general catch-all of original contributions to your field. Now,
a lot of creativity as a lawyering and a lot of presentations. You can do a lot with that one.
So when I think you can. When I think of the easy, let's say the softball way to meet that one, I think of patents. It's basically if you come up with something good enough that either you or your employer want to go to the government to have it recognized and protect it. That's usually indication of a serious contribution to your field. That's the classic one I think of when I think of science technology folks. Yeah. There's publications about you. So if there's professional publications where they highlight you and they say you're in the engineering industry and there's a journal of automotive engineering and they highlight the work you're doing with Tesla or something and they say, wow, it's an article about all the cool work you're doing. That's the sort of thing that might convince the government that you are of extraordinary ability. Evidence that you have a leading role in critical or important organizations. So basically, if you establish that your organization is prestigious, perhaps one that has patents or has major accomplishments in the field.
So if you have a title of a CEO in a company, is that enough?
Well, probably not. No, just it has to be a prestigious organization. I mean, it's not just your CEO. Is that company's
Fortune 500?
That's a serious business. Yeah.
And if you are like a senior director or something, right?
Yeah.
And you have something that you've done that made a difference.
Yeah.
And you were recognized.
That's a prestigious. Yeah. I launched this product that made that's my ideal one. I launched something that made us $1 zillion.
Money talk.
Money does talk.
Money talk, yes, absolutely. If you can show your achievement by dollars and cents, that's the put up or shut up kind of an approach. You proved your case.
Speaking of, we're coming to the bottom end of our list of requirements, but evidence that you command a high salary compared to others in your field.
That's another one. It's
if
a number. You cannot argue.
If in the free market they think you're worth it, the government goes, all right. I guess if somebody else thinks you're worth it, we'll consider that as a positive criteria. Yeah. So that's really kind of the list. So
if the prevailing wage for the position that you're doing as a director is $130,000 and your salary is $250,000, then that's boom.
Yeah.
You met one of three, and you only need to meet three
of 10.
Of 10. Now, do you present a case with three only?
If you want to get your case denied, okay, not necessarily get your case denied, but I'm all in favor of coming up with extra arguments. Now, Sam, sometimes in the office, I have an idea. I have a couple ideas, and I'll have a bad one, and I'll have three good ones, and give you one to toss out, make you feel like the boss, give you one to toss out, so you.
I'm comfortable with arguing five cases.
Yeah.
5 criteria, and knowing that I have 2 weak ones, and let the government knock those out, and then accept the 3. Because if you give only 3, you're really at their mercy, because it's very subjective, quite frankly.
Yeah. Exactly. I would agree with that.
So there's a couple things about the extraordinary ability that we should talk about. Is there's no job offer.
Yeah, no job offer is required. You can basically say, no, nobody's offering me a position, but I'm so good.
And no labor certification.
No labor certification, yes.
Right? And you must be entering the U.S. to continue working in the area of extraordinary ability. So it's an intent thing. I intend to, right? I'm not going to come here. I have an extraordinary ability in cybersecurity, but I'm going to open a restaurant. I intend to work in this field. I intend to open my own company. I intend to seek jobs. I have contacted universities for my work, blah, blah, blah. But it's really a low standard. It's really almost a statement. So all what you need to do is make a statement that you intend, and that's good enough. And there's a requirement here that really you and I talked about. This is entering into the United States will substantially benefit the U.S. in the future. That's a given. You don't really have to. That criteria is kind of a silly one because, sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're that good. It's kind of a give. Oh yeah, that's the one we're talking about. Where if you have a good case, you don't really have to argue that one. It kind of speaks for itself.
Well, you'll mention it.
Oh yeah, that'll be the one I close out my letter with. But I don't have to really plead the case anymore because everything I've said, he meets like 5 of these 10 requirements. It's obvious.
Yes. So usually, obviously, also there's in the science, there's in the arts, in business. So it's not only in the science, but it's. But in many other fields, it's wide open. A lot of gold medalists end up coming here to the United States as coaches and trainers on EB1. And this used to be like a no big deal. But when things got tougher, if your gold medalist 10 years old, they say, oh, you're outdated.
You have to have that sustained prominence in your field. And if you haven't done anything good in the last couple years,
then that can be, so you got to have to hit the medal at the right time and file your application in the right time to take advantage of it. But that's the EB1 extraordinary ability.
Well, Sam, I got to mention one other thing about this. What's interesting is, the Biden administration put out that new policy on O1 visas.
Yes.
Right?
And a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, pretty recent. And they said, for O1 visas, here's all the neat ways STEM people can meet the requirements for an O1 visa. And the neat thing about O1 visas is they have substantially the same criteria as the EB1 extraordinary ability category. So we kind of take this as sort of an opening up of the O1 category, and I want to highlight a couple of things they say in this policy update.
Please.
So they say, in terms of nationally or internationally known awards, they say that PhD scholarships, as long as it's competitive, open to a large group, can potentially qualify for that, right? They say membership in associations, and one of the associations cited in the USCIS policy handbook is the Institution of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. And we looked this up. It has almost 500,000 members worldwide. Yeah. So
So it's not that exclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have some achievement, but it's not like it's impossible to get into.
Yeah.
Right.
And in terms of employment in a critical capacity with distinguished organizations, we were talking about, acting as that director who launched a product. They say, if you are in a startup, they really sort of give you the example of a startup where you've attracted a ton of investment. That might be enough to meet that requirement. So really, they haven't changed the law, they haven't changed the regulations even, but they've issued this policy that says, that sort of gives some great examples of how STEM people can get into the O1 category. And even though the EB1 requirements are a little bit loftier, they view the EB1 extraordinary ability visas cases very strictly, or more strict than the O1s. It basically gives more people, especially in the STEM fields, a path into those O1 visas, which ultimately puts you in a world where you can really achieve more of those requirements to get you on that extraordinary ability track.
So everybody understands an O1 visa is a non-immigrant visa, just like an H-1B, and it is for aliens of extraordinary ability. It's exact word for word, the same legal standard for EB1, which is you must be an alien of extraordinary ability. It's the exact standard. Why would anybody apply for O1 and not apply for EB1 right away? Twofold. One is a lot of companies would hire people on O1 and they're usually abroad at the time and they're not ready to file for an immigrant visa, and O1 is a lot quicker. Yeah. You can get somebody here in about 2 months, right? Yeah. On an O1, and it's fantastic because you get a work permit and you work for this company, and then you can apply for your
It's
EB1.
nice to apply for a green card from inside the United States because you're already here and the green card process can take a long time.
And the fact that you're working for a company gives that psychological feel, although it's not a requirement. I've done EB1, I'm sure you have, Brian.
Yeah.
For people that
never stepped foot inside the country, right?
Never been in the U.S., never. And they are PhDs and accomplished people all over the world, and they say, I'd like to do, as a matter of fact, we're doing right now, we start looking at one yesterday for an accomplished lady, and the analysis was completed in the day today, and I was told by the team that they believe it's a very solid EB1 case. This lady had never been to the U.S.
Yeah.
And
it's just not the usual path. Usually, you step foot into the waters of the United States, then go for a swim in the deep end that is an immigrant petition.
And here's what you have to understand, and I think probably something that is maybe an advice for anybody who is considering venturing into the EB1. First of all, you can get a quick opinion from an attorney who doesn't charge you a fee. You're going to get exactly what you put into it. You are going to get the same level, which is a very superficial analysis, because an attorney needs to put 3 or 4 hours in a case to really come out with an answer, and nobody's going to put 3 or 4 hours without being compensated. So you can ask somebody for free, you can get the answer, and that's that. You can retain an attorney who is going to put 2 to 3 hours on the case and then give you, in my opinion, a lot more meaningful analysis.
Well, we discussed earlier, all these extraordinary ability requirements and or the O1 requirements are subjective. If somebody comes to me and says, I have an award and I want to look up at that award, what were the criteria for that award? What was your competition looking like? If you're going to sell that award to the government, it has to be, you have to explain why it's valuable, and you can't just do that from its face.
Well, not only, there are people you can. There are people.
Nobel Prize,
yeah,
sure.
You can. There are people. In about 5 minutes, say, "Wow, yeah, sure."
Sure.
But that's the exception.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it really requires to kind of dig in and dive in.
I like to think of it as trying to make myself a little expert in their field, get an idea as to what their field's like, so I can understand
and what they've done, what they've accomplished, and that requires a little bit of work.
Yeah.
The other thing that you should know, that if you have, let's say, an EB2 pending or an EB3 pending, and let's say you tried an EB1 and it's not approved, it has absolutely no impact on your EB2 or EB3 whatsoever. Yeah. It really doesn't. So it's not the end of the world if the government didn't think that you are in EB1. If you found that the attorney believed in you, you believed in your case, you presented it, and let's assume you weren't as lucky. It's an important question to answer. What happens to me? Nothing. You're just fine. So that's what I just wanted to kind of bring up for people.
Okay.
Shall we jump in on the other two categories?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit quicker perhaps about
Yeah.
its extraordinary abilities. I'm going to call it its cousin, outstanding professor or researcher.
Yes.
So the outstanding professor or researcher category is a little bit like the EB1 extraordinary ability, and it has a list of criteria that you have to meet. However, the list is a little bit smaller, but you have to only meet 2 of the criteria. Yeah, so let's talk.
It's very similar, exactly. But at the outset, people come to me and say, well, what about the outstanding researcher? Or, well, are you a researcher? Well, I've been doing research. That's not what a researcher, especially if you're on an H-1B. If you're on an H-1B or on a J visa or on whatever visa, your title in the filings with the government has to be researcher.
Yeah.
That's a title. That's an H-1B title.
Yeah.
You cannot be. It's very difficult to argue that you are a researcher when your title with the government for the last 5 years has been senior developer. Yeah. That's not going to fly. Yeah. So a researcher is a researcher. That's the number one thing. The company you work for typically are research oriented. They're interested in looking at it because you have been employed for 3 years in a research capacity. So they look at the employer. There are employers out there that they do research. They do scientific research. They do, whether universities or private institutions, but they are research oriented. Yeah. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that a research institution also has to, one that's not a college or university, also has to have 3 researchers, also, full-time researchers. So that's sort of another limitation there. However,
it's done successfully.
They're out there, and I think of how do you know you might be a research institution, you have some research going on there. I think of, again, patents. If you're producing something that's worthy of protecting, there may be some research going on there. So Sam, I'm a little bit more optimistic. If there's a fine line between creating a new product and becoming creating something new and being a researcher, I think.
Right, but the requirement is that you have worked as a researcher for 3 years.
Yeah, yes. It really
you have to meet that.
Yeah,
that requirement. Now you may have stumbled on some discovery, but you're not a researcher.
Agree with that. So
and then the professor, professor. We know what a professor is, right? It has to be either tenure or tenure track, the job. So if the job is not tenure or tenure track, you would not meet the outstanding researcher.
So research. Yeah. So outstanding professors or researchers, and they have their sort of similar requirements to the. A list of sort of criteria versus the EB1 extraordinary ability, and these are sort of the same things: receipt of rewards, membership in associations, judging others, contributions to the field like patents, and authorship of books. Big difference there. That requires sponsorship. You have to have in this category. You have to have somebody, an employer that's a college or university for the professors, or a private business for the research person saying, we support this case.
But no labor certification is required.
Yeah, and lesser scrutiny, lesser requirements than the EB1 extraordinary ability guys.
Most researchers are members in associations. Yeah. Honestly, and a lot of them have done work as a judge of others because they judge each other. Yeah. So if you're a researcher that put 3 or 4 years in anything at any graduate or postgraduate level, oftentimes it's not very difficult to get that through.
So Sam, we have one category left of EB1, and I think it's the one I get asked about the most, and it's probably the least understood.
The outstanding multinational executives or managers.
Yes, sir.
All right, take it.
So the multinational managers and executives category is closely tied to the L1A category. The L1A category, that's the non-immigrant temporary work category. For anybody who's not familiar, allows international companies to transfer their managers and executives from abroad to the United States to work in a managerial or executive capacity. Pretty straightforward. The EB1 managers or executives immigration category has substantially identical requirements. Basically, you have to come from a foreign company that has an affiliate in the United States, a related company in the United States. Work abroad there for one of the last 3 years prior to coming to the United States, at least one of the last 3 years prior to coming to the United States. You come to the United States on an L1 visa, is a typical directory, and then you end up filing for an EB1 because the requirements are so close.
And the L1A, you can come in. It's from a middle management to top.
Yeah.
So if somebody who opened, let's say, in the IT field, the common one is you open your IT company in India, let's say, and you have 30, 40, 50, 60 employees there, and then you come here and you obtain an L1A as a opening a branch office. And
pretty common scenario for us. We've helped a lot of people just, we get a call and they say, I have this company, India or anywhere. I want to do business in the United States. And my favorite kind of cases because they're fun. We get to help somebody, found a new business, register that business, get over here and get it going, do that first L1, help them, we kind of serve as general counsel for them for a while until they get their business going and advise them how to start a business in the United States. Bring themselves, start bringing other people, and you have a whole new operation going in the U.S.
And that requires a little bit of requirements as far as the parent company and the U.S. company, and there's relationships involved. So if there's something that you are projecting, you want to get involved in, it's definitely helpful to sit down with an attorney for about half an hour or 45 minutes. Just the key highlights to understand what's a qualifying relationship. You cannot be the only executive overseas and come here because that means you're abandoning the foreign company. You have to have an assistant over there who takes over and a few other requirements that you have to have.
I think I mentioned I get a lot of questions. This category is misunderstood. People often, we're doing an EB2 or EB3 case for somebody and they say, well, I'm a manager here in the United States. I want to be in the EB1 manager category. And I think what people fail to understand is you have to have worked for the company abroad before coming to the United States in order to get into that EB1 manager category.
During the last 3 years.
During the last 3 years. And it's something where I've seen people, go, they've been in the United States for a while and they go abroad, go back to the home country or elsewhere and take that managerial role abroad. And I see them again coming back a couple years later on an L1 and then suddenly they end up in the EB1 category. So that's in terms of people wanting to get out of EB2 or EB3. If you have a company that has offices abroad, that's something I think is a legitimate option. If you are a senior person in the company, they are happy to have you working abroad in a managerial capacity, and that's the sort of thing where I see that's something where somebody can actually escape from EB2 or EB3 pretty easily. And,
So we do a lot of those, and we obviously go through the whole experience into making them U.S. citizen, and then we help their families. So it's a lot of fun. But if you qualify, you qualify. You've opened your business abroad, 2 or 3 years. You set it up well. You're ready to come here on an L1, and you're ready to get your green card on L1A. As an executive, and that's an easy process, not a complicated process. Probably the best path for anybody who's creative.
Yeah, in terms of least stressful kind of L1, EB1 for me, I would say the managers or executives. I guess it depends upon the case, but it's one that makes sense. And I feel like if you own a bit, the extreme example of owning the business, if you own that business and you have started a legit operations in the U.S., I feel like those work pretty well.
Yeah. That's it. So that's what we got here for
EB1.
Hopefully it was helpful. And we'll be back to answer your questions.
All right, Sam. We have some questions, and true to form, it takes me a second to bring them up here. All right, so let's check out the questions we have. Here's one from Sweet Seller. So that's, can a Social Security number received after EAD for dependent child be used for tax filing? And he continues. If the Social Security number is applied with I-765, how does it get delivered? A mail after receiving EAD or green card. Any additional action is needed from the applicant apart from filing I-765 and indicating SSN. And presumably he means, on that I-765 form asking them for that.
Right.
So it should be delivered shortly. Typically the directory I see is shortly after that EAD comes in, a couple weeks later, you should see a Social Security card from the Social Security Administration. However, I have heard on rare occasion that they just kind of blow it, and you don't get that Social Security card in the mail. And sometimes if you contact the Social Security Administration, they may be able to update you on the status if there's something wrong, but sometimes they just never got the request.
Yeah. Now, sweet seller, did you just get your green card? I'm curious because these questions looks like maybe you already got your green card. We are curious.
It seems, yeah. Well, I don't know.
He'll tell us.
We'll see in the comments below. Yeah. So, is it a good sign of I-45 approval if I-140 is already approved and EAD approved too?
Is it a good sign? Well, yes and no. I'm very pleased when I see an I-140 approval. I'm very pleased when I see an EAD is approved, meaning that the adjustment status is accepted and is properly filed. Yeah. It is not an indication on the I-485 itself, but obviously to get to the I-485, you need to get this I-140 approved. So I'm usually pleased to see that, but it is not an indication of an I-485 is going to be approved. But is that a good sign, getting an I-140 approved? Yes, it's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a key piece of information missing there. It's what's your priority date? If your I-140 is approved and your priority date is current, I mean, that's the ultimate good sign for I-485 approval. You have met the prerequisites for it, you know?
Have you been seeing I-140 and I-485 approved at the same time? No. You haven't been seeing those?
No.
So we used to get those a lot back in the days.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of people. I mean, we were doing a lot of interfilings right now, and I'm seeing a lot of people with, that were approved in the EB3 category a while back, and their priority date would have been current for a little bit in EB3, and then now their dates rolled back in EB3, and now they're interfiling to EB2 because, well,
yes,
you want your green card.
Yes.
So, a question is, do we have any numbers for I-45 approvals for the year 2022? And I've been looking, but I haven't looked in the last, since probably late last week. I haven't seen any numbers, but I'm sure somebody will tell me if those numbers have been published.
Well, year 2022, that means fiscal year 22, that started in October.
Yeah.
October 2021. And I would say probably by now we should start seeing them if we haven't seen them yet. Brian is doing a very quick search for you right now as we talk to see if...
No, I don't. The last updates I see on the immigration statistics from USCIS on its immigration statistics website are from December 15th, 2021, and that means they haven't quite gotten to releasing the
information.
The information you're looking for. I'm excited about those too because I really want to see how they're doing versus how they were doing the last quarter of fiscal year 2021.
Right. Everybody is looking forward to see, right?
Yes. Follow-up question. Also, I got a new card being produced on EAD status, but AP still fees are waived. Will the EAD card most likely come as a combo card? So it sounds like, EAD and AP filed with your adjustment, but the EAD, it looks like they're doing something with it. And are they doing anything with the AP? I guess my take is I don't really trust those online tracking systems from USCIS that much. They're oftentimes inaccurate. So
nobody can tell.
Nobody can tell.
You tell us. You let us know.
So the way you'll know is on the bottom of your card. It'll say Access I-512, excuse me, advanced parole, and that's how you know it's an advanced parole.
Yeah.
I wish you luck because it's probably easier carrying one document than two, right?
Hello, thank you for your service. My pleasure. I'm on H-1B. Can I invest in real estate? I mean, rental properties. Thank you.
Oh, this is a fun question, which we tackled before.
Yes, but we can tackle again.
Yeah.
The answer is it depends. What does it depend on, Brian?
Sam. I know you're an attorney because the answer is always it depends, right?
That's right. Sorry about that.
So it depends whether it is an active investment,
or a passive investment,
versus a passive one. The rules of your H-1B visa is that what you're allowed to do, the work you're allowed to do in the United States is do your H-1B work described in your H-1B petition for your H-1B employer. That's the work you're allowed to do. And so you can invest money in real estate. You can buy a property. However, if that suddenly becomes, an active investment, one where you're required to do work, that's when it becomes a problem for your immigration status. So the classic, go ahead, Sam.
No, that's a good point. So, yeah, do you get a call at 10 o'clock at night and say, my hot water heater is broke, and then you have to run around and help fix it? Or does that phone call go to a management company that you pay them a fee? It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If you're managing the day-to-day, you're shoveling snow, you're fixing grass, you're fixing painting, then definitely you are crossed into the active, and that is a violation of your H-1B. But if you have a management company, that's all what you do is, let's assume you pay them, $10,000, you pay the mortgage, $20,000 a year, and you collect $35,000 and you pocket $5,000, that's all what you do, then that's passive investment. But if you do more, it's active investment. So that's really the answer. I will tell you my honest opinion, forget about the lawyer opinion. If your apartment number is few, 2 or 3, most of the time you're active. If you're involved in a project that has 20 units or 30 units, 99% of the time there's a management, there's an organization, there's employees running it, you're not involved. And a lot of time that's a passive investment.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I like to think of it as,
And renting an apartment is a pain, and I hate it. I never got into it, and I will never. I've seen people involved in that business. That's a tough business, man. That's hard work. But that's not what you asked me. All right, Brian, take that one.
So from Sweet Seller, with USCIS calling for interfiling and announcing huge visas for fiscal year 2022, does that mean for the near foreseeable future, EB2 will move forward with no retro and EB3 will hold on to its current date?
That's a rhetorical question, comes from a very smart guy. Because he knows that we cannot predict, but when somebody says huge visas, you would expect that's the case. But the truth is something that we will find out soon. I have no projection personally, but Brian, maybe you have some thoughts on that.
No, I think, like I said, Sam, the visa bulletin makes fools of us as soon as we say something about it. However, I'm going to say something, Sam. Again, the departed Charles Oppenheim from the Department of State said that we could expect maybe a slowdown in EB2, where it might even retrogress a little bit. So I don't know what we're going to see, but I don't think we can presume that EB2 is going to keep on leaping forward for the time being.
Well, I see improvements in the processing. I mean, all the signs looking positive compared to last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic. It looks like, I have no crystal ball again, but that's what it looks like.
You know what will keep EB2 moving forward? Them actually using the visas that are allocated and giving them out to people. That keeps EB2 moving forward. It means, you're taking advantage of the visas.
But we said that approval is independent of the movement of the visa last week. But I think we did conclude that
the final action dates,
if there's less wastage, there should be better movement.
Yes.
Yes. What's the logic behind allowing visa numbers to expire after fiscal year if not issued? It makes no sense if the demand is there, but visas were wasted due to processing inefficiency.
That's the sort of question we're supposed to be asking because I don't have a great answer for it. There's no logic.
I do have a great answer for it. When a law is written 3 decades ago, it has lost all logic or sense. And dealing with a gridlock politics that has absolutely nobody got the guts to correct things, then we are in a bankrupt system. That's why.
Well, that's a good point. A law that might have worked 30 years ago. Imagine how much the world has changed in the last 30 years.
Yes. They figured, it hasn't been used. We got plenty more coming next year. Just keep them going because we have allotted tons of green cards. And now, 30 years later, boom, all the visas are out. We're backed up for 10 years.
So, from SanFax, if USCIS Q1 October to December 2021 processing data released, the answer again is no. I just looked at it. I heard somebody had some preview data out there, but I haven't seen the official data from them. have you seen any approvals with the new EB2 upgrade interfile process? When do you think the 55K EB3 ROW block will be released?
We have no way to predict. I mean, we don't even have the October to December 2021 processing dates.
I don't think we've seen anybody. I mean, they just published that that new address. What about 2 weeks ago, honestly. So I don't think that's enough time for them to really act. I bet there's somebody out there in the universe who has probably seen a positive benefit from that office. However, I mean, we have seen some interfiling cases successfully get approved.
If the source that published data hasn't published data, where is everybody getting their numbers? So I mean, we just got to be patient until the data is released.
Here is a question from Subha Madhavi. I meet the 3 criteria for EB3 1A, but moved to employment in a related field 4 years ago. Most of my publications and work is not recent, 2010 through 2016. Does this make my case weak?
Well, the piece I would like to know more about is but I moved to employment in a related field 4 years ago. I meet 3 criteria, but I moved to employment in a related field. Is it only 4 years ago? Or you moved away from it? I don't understand what that means.
So,
publication 2010 to 2016 does not make it weak. Looks like maybe you've gotten away from research and now you're into the productive field.
It raises questions to me about this. I mean, if you're going for EB1, presumably extraordinary ability, the sustained accolade, if the sustained nature of it. If you haven't been really in the field for 4 years, that's where I start to worry.
Well, I think so. You're reading into it that he said that he's moved away from the field.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah. That he's employment in a related field. But I mean, another one of the things I think that when I see 3 criteria for EB1A, I'd say all the government.
You get. I mean, obviously it's easier said than done. But you get back in it 1 year and you publish one more time, then everything becomes current.
Yeah. Sometimes I have a talk with somebody who's in academia and can is really close. I'd say there are things you can do. You can get on some boards to review publications or judgment panels, and you can make your case better.
But again, it's a case by case because he may have moved on in a leadership role in an organization, and we can build a story. Yeah. So it all depends on what you've done. If you've taken a
you're right. I'm taking a dour view that's gotten away from it. I mean, it could be you've moved on to bigger, better things, and that you're right. It's the fun of these cases for me, Sam, is getting to write that story and tell them, no, I didn't get away from doing the important stuff. I'm doing more important things.
Progression.
I'm taking myself out from the boring old academic, and I'm actually making things happen.
I'm applying it or something.
All really it's so facts dependent though.
Facts driven, yes. Yeah. So hopefully we answered your question or gave you a flavor of what you should be looking for.
Yeah.
Suba. All right.
So.
Hey Sam, my adjustment status is pending, and I need to travel outside the U.S. All right. I have an H-1B stamp valid until November 22. Is there any issue while returning? I understand that while I need to file my I-31 again after return. Well, looks like you have all the good signs. You have an H-1B stamp. I'm assuming you're employed. It doesn't have to be the same employer, but you're working. Your H-1B is in good condition. You're working in the same LCA location, you're being paid the same salary, you can show a history of work, I don't have a problem with you leaving and coming back prior to November 2022. Brian, would you like to add to that?
Well, no, I was just thinking, 221Gs are up lately, but this person has a visa stamp in their hand. I mean, maybe have a nice letter confirming your current employment for the customs folks if they're really bored and want to ask you about it. But yeah,
you're good.
Here we are from Bakala Prasad. Mother's green card expires in March 2023. When can she file for renewal? If processing takes longer and her GC expires, is she still in status while application is adjudicated?
Well, green card renewal, go ahead, Brian. Green card renewal has nothing to do with status.
Yes.
So a green card renewal is simply an update of the picture.
Well, yeah, let me state it another way. Once you are a permanent resident, you are a permanent resident until you're not a permanent resident. Letting the card expire does not terminate your permanent residency. It is just evidence of your permanent residence.
It is. I think it's a. You must renew your green card, and it's
Sure.
required by law to renew your green card, but it does not suspend her status in the U.S.
Yeah.
It is not like a driver's license. I think that's what people confuse it. They think it's like a driver's license.
Yeah.
I cannot drive my car because my driver's license expired. What happened to my status when my green card expired? Your green card does not expire. So that's one part of the question. I think if processing takes longer and her green card expires, it's still, okay, when can I file? What can I renew? I think renewal is 6 months before.
You know, I think it is 6 months. I will admit that I don't have encyclopedia knowledge.
180 days.
180 days. So there you go. Yeah. And oftentimes, and I'm pretty sure. Well,
I'm sorry. Can file 90 days in advance, guys. 90 days in advance.
And I believe they will give you the receipt notice for the.
Yes.
They'll give you a receipt notice.
Which is proof for 12 months, but it's renewable as this thing is pending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, they will issue another one.
Yeah. They'll give you a receipt notice that says, "Hey, your green card is still valid while this case is pending."
Yes.
Yeah. So, can Social Security number for child be used and delivered after EAD? I'm still waiting for green card. With your good wishes, I may get it soon. So, first of all, most importantly, good wishes upon you. Secondly, is yes. I mean, there's not much use of it for a child typically, but most people want them so they can get a bank account, for example.
Well, the use of it is to list the child on your tax return as a dependent and get some deductions. And then normally they ask for the Social Security number, I believe. I don't prepare taxes, and I have somebody that does my own. So there are advantages, but yes, absolutely, you can use it for that purpose.
It's addressed to you, Sam.
All right. Hello, Sam. Mr. Linga, how are you? I-485 case status changed to case transferred and new office has jurisdiction. What does this mean? That's great news. Well, potentially. I mean, it depends on what office. Did they give you what office? Is it local office or a new service center? Is the question.
I'm intrigued. So it used to be, so anytime they do this, historically, Sam, I remember we used to get a lot of USCIS case transfer notices when USCIS saying, hey, we moved your case from one office to another. And even though we know they're still moving cases around from one office to another, I haven't seen many of those notices lately. So my hope is that, Gopinath, is that they will send you a notice in the mail saying, hey, we've transferred the office to which your case has moved offices. Here's the new office where it's at. And what's your thoughts on office movements, Sam?
Well, I mean, obviously, if it's a local office, it's great news because it looks like you may be going to an interview, which means the case is ready to go forward.
Yeah.
A movement to a service center looks like a workload shift.
Yeah.
And a workload shift, I mean, I have to know your priority date. I should, I hope, I don't commit them to memory. So don't be disappointed not remembering your priority date. But if your priority date is current, movement is good. But whether even with a service center, they're trying to move cases to get them moving.
Yeah.
But a local office means you get ready for an interview most of the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of time they do move them to the local office to review them, approve them.
Yeah, there was a trend like sometime, I think it was early in 2021, where they said we're moving some files to local field offices so we can get them approved because we just don't have the capacity in the main service centers right now.
Yes, and yes, for Sweet Seller, yes, you can certainly use it for tax filing. Absolutely.
So I started watching late. Did you cover EB1 functional managers?
Oh, that's a great one.
I know, they're fun cases. So we're going to go deep.
We can revisit.
We're going to go take a very narrow but deep dive into the
function managers.
Into the functional managers. So when I think of an EB1 manager or an L1A manager, what the government thinks of them, there's really two types. There's the managers of people, and there's the managers of a function. Now, managers of people, they're going to have a team of people underneath them, and that team's going to be devoted to a task. And basically, that manager leads the team in completing that task. And then there's functional managers. Functional managers, well, they manage a function. They have a very important task that's been delegated to them, and that's what they manage. And really, those are what those cases that USCIS is more skeptical of.
Yes. And therefore, it all depends on the organization you're involved in. If you are a function manager or a functional manager in a larger organization, your chances of getting approved is high. If you are a function manager in a smaller organization, the chances of approval is lower. Why? Because USCIS is very biased and very suspicious of smaller organizations and more trusting of bigger organizations. Normally, a bigger organization has a large human resource machinery behind it and provide the necessary proof and support, and usually the functions are bigger because the company is bigger. And the function usually is smaller because the company is smaller for smaller companies, and therefore it becomes more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is there's still a path. I mean, functional managers are L1A managers, and functional managers are EB1 managers. It is possible to do an EB1 case as a functional manager, no doubt.
And by the way, if you are new to the world of function manager challenge in the L1A world, that problem existed as far back as 15 years ago.
Yeah.
This is not a new issue, has always been an issue.
Yeah, I think, I've done plenty of functional manager cases, though, and they just require a little bit more, I guess a regular manager of people is, you show them the USCIS an organizational chart saying, here's our guy and here's all the people underneath him. It's very easy for them to understand how you're a manager. It just requires a little bit more salesmanship, a little bit more understanding to basically make USCIS understand while you're just as important as a guy who manages people. That what you do is a critical function within your organization.
Right.
Yeah.
While I-485 is pending, if Green Card EAD expired, cannot work after 180-day extension, but can work, attend, or enroll for higher studies. Yes, the answer is you can.
Yes.
You can definitely, because the attending or enrolling in higher education is not work.
Yeah, it's not employment.
It's not employment.
Yeah.
Whereas a green employment is when you're receiving money for work that you're doing.
Yeah, for anybody not familiar, that your green card, your pending green card EAD, if you file for an extension, you file it timely, you do it right, you get a 180-day extension. But I guess that kind of gives you insight into Bakala Prasad's thoughts about USCIS processing times. That he's concerned that they can't get to my green card EAD extension in 180 days, and I don't blame him for being a little bit paranoid having that question.
We expect within 180 days from today, hopefully, that we also might have a premium processing for the EAD.
Yeah.
So that's a potential solution that we may be looking at soon.
Yes.
All right.
So Centaur, a usual viewer, with a comment, but I'm not quite sure I understand the context.
Maybe he had a prior.
Maybe I missed one.
Yeah.
I don't see one immediately prior.
He may have commented on something that now we have forgotten about.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
So Sam,
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I know. The sun and the moon have aligned at 6:58 p.m. and we have hit the end of our questions.
That's great. Well, thank you guys for listening to us. I hope that this was helpful today. And like we always say, you have some thoughts or ideas about things that you want us to talk about, send them over to me or Brian. We'd love to consider them. You guys have a great day.